Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brenda Bailey, and I'm BC's Minister of Finance. So happy to be here today. We're on the territory of the Salish peoples, including the Kwantlen, the Matsqui, the Katsi, and the Semiahmoo First Nations. What an opportunity to see a studio backlot that is often very busy with film and TV, and today we get to be here to enjoy the beautiful holiday setting. Here in British Columbia, the film industry is a big part of our culture and economic vitality. Thousands of people in British Columbia rely on a thriving film industry to make their livings. That's why I'm pleased to introduce the folks that we have with us here today who are deeply committed to ensuring that BC continues to be the backdrop of the biggest productions. Of course, our Premier David Eby, Spencer Chandra Herbert, who is our Minister for Tourism, Art, Culture and Sport, Parliamentary Secretary Nina Krieger, who's the Parliamentary Secretary for Arts and Film, Gemma Martini, our host here today, who's Chair of Screen BC, Crystal Bronworth of IATSE, the union representing workers in the sector, as well as many representatives from the motion picture sector. And now I would like to welcome our Premier David Eby to the podium.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. I wasn't that long ago that we were here on the election campaign, and I made a commitment to the hardworking people of British Columbia's film industry that we saw where you were at, that we were feeling the brunt of major changes in the industry, around decisions by major streamers to ratchet back productions, that there was increased competition from other jurisdictions with subsidies for the industry, and that the impact of the labor disruptions that the sector had faced had taken a toll here at BC. Well, I'm really glad to be back here today with some very good news. We made the commitment to you, and we're following through on that. But before we get into that, I do need to speak about a very serious issue facing the province right now, which is President-elect Trump's ongoing and unjustified tariff threat against all Canadians and British Columbians. I had the opportunity to meet yesterday with the Prime Minister and premiers from across Canada. This week I met with our Chamber of Commerce in British Columbia. I spent an hour this morning with the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade talking about these issues and strategizing on how we're going to move forward. What we've heard from the business sector is that these tariffs are absolutely going to have an impact in British Columbia, a significant impact on jobs, on families here in the province, but also that these tariffs are going to have a huge impact on Americans as well, driving up the costs of energy, driving up the costs of housing, and making life more unaffordable for residents of the United States. And no one will benefit from this. I've also had the opportunity to speak with labor leaders about the impact on employment in the province. Everyone is committed to work together in British Columbia as part of unified Team Canada response to these unjustified tariffs. And nothing is off the table. We will ensure, as a message I delivered to the Prime Minister and other premiers, we will ensure in British Columbia we do our part to fight against these tariffs, to ensure the British Columbians are protected, and we want to ensure that it is a unified Team Canada approach where we are all doing our part right across the country to respond. I'm sure I'll get some questions about that, but during the Q&A. But I wanted to, off the top, really underline that when it comes to the issue of retaliatory tariffs, of sending a message back, if these tariffs are in fact imposed on Canada and there is an attempt to hurt Canadian families and hurt British Columbians, then we will do our part to respond. Now, on to happier news. First of all, I want to thank Gemma for having us here at Martini Studios. It's beautiful, it's festive, it's Christmas time. I feel like I'm in an actual Hallmark special. They get streamed continuously at our house, and I feel like I've stepped right into the movies. And that's the magic of BC's film sector. Whether it's huge blockbuster productions like Deadpool, like The Last of Us, If it's small boutique productions, whether it's domestic Canadian productions telling our stories or big international studios telling epic tales, our crews are second to none, our facilities are second to none, and we have a proud and long heritage here in British Columbia of film and television production. And it's something we're all very proud of. The impact here of the sector is massive. Even just one show, we had Virgin River, a Netflix show filmed here in British Columbia. Just that one show had $44 million spent on the 5th season. That was 390 direct jobs that were created for local cast and crew. It supported over 500 businesses in multiple communities, and that's just one. Here at Martini Studios, they had all kinds of productions. There were posters up in the movie theater that's just down the street here, showing multiple productions, Christmas movies that were filmed here. It's an impressive thing. But as I said, this is a sector that's taken some hits. The decision by major studios to draw down some of their budgets, to reduce some of their budgets on production, the impact of labor disruptions, other jurisdictions competing with British Columbia for these productions with significant subsidies for the industry. It means that we need to respond. We need to make sure that we continue to be competitive and we continue to be world leading in attracting these productions and delivering them, both for domestic and international productions. And so that's why I'm so happy to be here to follow through on a commitment we made during the election. In our next budget, we will ensure that there are increased tax incentives for BC's motion picture sector to make sure that we remain competitive internationally. Specifically, we will be increasing the Film Incentive BC tax credit, which supports Canadian productions, as well as the Production Services tax credit that provides a tax incentive for international projects made in British Columbia. We will also have an additional benefit for productions valued at $200 million or more. And the benefit will be in effect starting January 1st in British Columbia. We know that major studios are making decisions right now for our productions. The applause that you hear right now is, if you can't see them, there are lots of film workers here, and they know that major studios are making decisions as we speak about where to locate productions. That's why it's important that this news comes out now. It's important that we've backdated the support to January 1st, 2025, so that as they're making those decisions, we can make sure that British Columbia is front of the line. Very shortly after swearing in, we sent our Minister of Finance, our Parliamentary Secretary of Film, our Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture to Los Angeles to meet directly with studio heads, to make the specific commitment to them that we would do what we're doing today, that we would make these incentives real, and we would ensure that they could rely on them and make decisions to come to British Columbia to produce their productions. Our province has the talent, we have the infrastructure, and now the modernized incentive structure to ensure that the industry continues to grow and delivers those jobs right across the province for British Columbians. I'm proud of our film sector. I'm proud of our television sector, both domestic and internationally. We're second to none, and you have a government that recognizes the hard work that you do, wants your sector to grow, and wants to keep supporting families in the province, grow our economy. That's what we're doing today. So thanks very much for having us, and more details about today's announcement to come from my colleagues who are up here to share some of the details with you. But thank you for joining us, and I'm very excited about today's announcement.
Thank you so much, Premier. I hear you say that you're very proud of the sector, and I just want to say I'm very proud of your commitment. You came here and made a commitment, and I'll share my personal story. I got a phone call from the Premier on a Sunday saying, would you like to be our Minister of Finance? On Monday, we were sworn in by the representative of the Crown, and on Tuesday, we were on a plane to deliver on this. And when the Premier decides it's time to go, it's time to go. So really delighted that we're here today making this announcement. It can't be understated how important these jobs are to our economy. We're in a time where economic growth is a singular focus of our government, and you're going to see us really double down on that work. The sector is contending with tighter budgets and production slowdowns, and it's critical. This is absolutely critical that we respond to these market conditions and invest in a sustainable film industry for workers, for communities, and of course, as we've said, for our economy. It's now my pleasure to invite Minister Spencer Chandra Herbert, a great fan and supporter of the industry, to tell you more about how exactly we're going to do that. Minister Chandra Herbert.
Thank you very much, Minister Bailey. Thank you, Premier. Thank you, Gemma. Thank you, everyone who's here today. We're here today because we love film in BC, and we're here today because British Columbians love film in BC. They love the jobs, they love the exposure, they love the fact that people want to come to BC after they've seen productions shot here. We know that it works. We know that these are good family-supporting jobs, and we know that we needed to act to defend these jobs. We needed to act to bring more jobs to BC. And so it was such an honor to be able to go to Los Angeles with our finance minister, with our parliamentary secretary, within seemingly hours of all of a sudden becoming a minister, to go there to talk to some of our top customers. You know, these are the people who make decisions about whether or not people are going to be employed in many respects, doing the jobs that they love in this province. And the message that they brought to us when we were there, and the message we brought to them, is we want to work together. We want more of these jobs in BC because they're great jobs. And we want them because they show up in every corner of this province. And they said to us, you are competitive with your labor, with the workers, with the talent. These are people who get the job done right the first time. They don't need to go back to multiple reshoots because somebody messed up. Our crews are experts. These are people who've been doing it for a long time. We've got the best locations. We've got studios like Martini Town here that serve such a vital role in making them feel comfortable doing business here, because our studios are experts. They're top of the line. They know what they're doing. Our filmmakers, our directors, you know, the small businesses that serve this industry, the communities, you know, everybody is behind this industry. The one thing that they said to us is, we want to make sure you're tax competitive. And certainly that was the message the Premier brought. That was the message our finance minister brought, is that we want to be tax competitive too, because when you're working in BC, our people are working, our province is growing, our economy is growing. And so they said, if you can make that happen, we will bring big productions here, as we have before, in an even bigger way. And so working to improve the tax incentives for Film Incentive BC from 28% to 36%, that's the Canadian content side. Working to improve the production services tax credit all the way up to 36% from 35%. Those differences may not, unless you do the accounting, you don't know what a big difference that'll make, because they said all of a sudden that has them looking at us in a bigger way. They want to be here. These changes make it so that they will come here. And importantly, adding an additional 2% for productions over $200 million. That's our way of saying to the big productions like The Last of Us that has shot here and made such a difference in so many communities, that we want you back. Our communities want you back, and we want more of you. The jobs are good, the community benefits are great, and film in BC is here to stay. So we got your back. We're here at Christmas time. This is a way of making sure that the workers in this industry and the companies know that we're here for them for the long term. You can make these investments long term. You can grow the industry today, tomorrow, and into the years ahead. It's wonderful to be here with so many of you who care so passionately about this industry, to make the difference so that you can go home, tell everybody that we're going to get those workers who are right now struggling to pay some bills, get them back to work, because film is great for BC, and we got your back. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Minister. And I would now like to invite Gemma Martini to the podium.
First, I'd like to say best Christmas present ever. So thank you, Minister Bailey, Premier Eby, Minister Chandra Herbert, and Parliamentary Secretary Krieger. This announcement is heartening and encouraging way to wind down an incredibly tumultuous year for our industry. We assure you that we do not take your attention to our industry lightly. We understand the multitude of economic and social priorities that are pressing for government, none of which are lost on us. It has been a very tough year for many, including those across our production community. We are deeply grateful to our government partners for their profound understanding of what we've collectively accomplished in building this industry in British Columbia to date. Even more importantly, we appreciate their vision for where we can still go with this business in our province if we share a common strategy for sustained success. First and foremost, this industry represents tens of thousands of jobs and businesses, therefore livelihoods, which have been tenuous with the conditions of the past few years. These jobs and businesses form the framework of our industry, which has a reputation as one of North America's most developed, most innovative, and progressive centers for production. From physical production to post-production, animation, visual effects, and virtual production, to the deep pool of creative crew and talent, many of whom are award-winning on the global stage and known for their ability to seamlessly and reliably integrate forces for vastly different productions time after time. Producers, directors, writers, and actors all contribute to the creation and creative decision-making that is helping to build both our global and domestic production interests. Our invested industry partners are building the infrastructure, facilities, and corresponding supply chain that ensures we don't miss a beat when a production comes to fruition here. I am very proud to represent an industry that has high expectations to build itself in the right ways, to be aspirational and lead on values that matter to people. This includes taking responsibility for sound environmental practices and ensuring equitable access to our industry, with diverse perspectives represented both in our stories and across our workforce, bringing these stories to life. When we took our annual trade mission to Los Angeles in November, as was mentioned previously, we were inspired by our Premier's decision to send a prominent government delegation, including Ministers Bailey, Chandra Herbert, and P.S. Krieger, to join us for one key day in the mission itinerary shortly after Cabinet was formed. This bold move engendered enormous confidence in our global production partners and provided our embedded government delegation with a crash update on the state of our industry worldwide, the challenges, opportunities, pain points, and outlook for what's ahead. It is clear that British Columbia is a well-respected and preferred global production partner, but we must be able to compete at the bottom line. We know our government's announcement will put BC back in the game to earn our true Hollywood North reputation. We are deeply grateful to our Premier and our ministers for moving quickly on this announcement. Time is of the essence and creative decisions, Time is of the essence, and creative decisions are being made as we speak. We expect to do our part in contributing to British Columbia's economic prosperity with a return to a more robust business as we know it, and we can't wait to get started in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gemma. I really want to recognize the work that Screen BC does as such a strong advocate for the motion picture industry. I want to ensure that we want to work together really to ensure that we're creating a competitive tax environment for this industry so that it continues to drive economic growth and benefit the so many communities around British Columbia who experience that benefit. So as well as the film tax credit increases, we're also going to address concerns that have been raised by the industry about regional tax credits for animated productions. We've heard over the past 12 months almost that those who relied on those tax credits and were following the rules, that canceling the regional tax credit for animators last year is hurting them. We intend to restore the credits for companies with a brick and mortar presence in a regional location, the original intention of these credits. Those outside of typical areas like Metro Vancouver and other film locals. The workers in this industry are incredibly talented. They're hardworking, and we want to make sure that they can continue to support their families. This particular change to the animation tax credit is really about encouraging economic development and industry growth in regions outside of BC's film hub. And we're restoring this tax credit for companies specifically with brick and mortar locations where those animators are working. So there'll be more on that to come later. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is Crystal Bronworth from IATSE, which represents the very talented people working in this industry. Crystal.
Oh, so many surprises today. Well, thank you, Premier. Thank you, Minister Bailey. Thank you, Minister Chandra Herbert. Parliamentary Secretary Krieger, thank you. And esteemed colleagues that are standing here today, where only just 2 months ago we all stood and learned of the NDP commitment to increase our industry's competitiveness on the global stage again and raise our incentive. Now, in BC, our incentive is unique. It is based on labor, which is based on jobs. So every single dollar paid out in incentive is directly connected to the heartbeat of a worker, their ability to pay their bills and put food on the table. It is not a race to the bottom. It is job creation that benefits British Columbians and invests in the people. Today marks a significant milestone, a moment that reflects not only our resilience, but also the ongoing support that our government has shown to motion picture workers, their families, businesses, and the economic benefits that we all bring to BC. As we are all aware, and we've heard, the global landscape for production has become increasingly competitive, with many regions vying for the same projects and talent. Motion picture workers and businesses have shouldered the impacts of a 40% reduction in production in life-changing ways, financially, mentally. Some have taken early retirement, many drawing on their savings, and some switching careers entirely. Yet, through it all, we continue to persevere because that is what we do. We make the impossible possible. And we are driven by our passion for storytelling and our commitment to the excellence of our work. The BC government has stood by us, demonstrating what it truly means to show up for its people. This announcement is more than just a policy change. It is a testament to the government's understanding of the unique challenges that we all face. By establishing a clear timeline for the tax incentive, our government is providing industry with the stability and certainty that is required to plan for the future. Studios can now budget with confidence, knowing that the support is a solid commitment that will empower our industry to thrive. The support that we have received from our Premier and the ministers has been instrumental in navigating these turbulent times. They have listened to our concerns, understood our needs, and taken decisive action to ensure that British Columbia remains a premier destination for film and television production, putting tens of thousands of motion picture workers back on the job, a union job. And this is what true leadership looks like, standing shoulder to shoulder with us and recognizing the vital role our industry plays in the economy and in the lives of countless workers. As we look ahead to 2025, we are now filled with renewed hope and determinism. We are excited about the opportunities that lie ahead, and we remain committed to working together to build a vibrant and sustainable film industry. The support that we have received today is a powerful reminder that even in the face of fierce global competition, we can succeed when we stand united. Together, we will continue to tell our stories, create jobs, and contribute to the rich tapestry of British Columbia's cultural landscape. Thank you for believing in us. Thank you for standing with us. And thank you for investing in our people and our future.
Thank you very much, Crystal, for those genuine and compelling words. And allow me to take a moment to thank Martini Town for hosting us today at this beautiful site. What a wonderful job you've done decorating for the season. We are happy to now take your questions.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have reporters here in person and on the phone line. For those on the phone line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You'll have one question and, of course, one follow-up. We're going to start here with Paul Johnson from Global News.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity here, can you spell out mechanically how this is going to work without delving into the details of tax accounting? What are the taxes currently that studios and production companies are paying? And for example, what are the specific breaks that they get on those taxes? How does this work?
So the British Columbia structure of tax incentives are specifically focused on labor. And you do see some different ways that tax structures are done around the world. Sometimes people do something called an all spend, which is the overall cost. Ours are specifically geared towards labor. And that's why you hear us talking today so much about the people that we value so much in this industry. It is about ensuring that these important jobs continue to thrive here in BC. Thanks.
Yeah, and just one follow-up here. Government is currently in a deficit situation. Presumably, there's an incentive to collect all of the taxes that the government can collect from any sector. What is the thinking behind this specific initiative? Is it that this is a big sector over time, maybe this pays for itself, or this is just something that's really important to British Columbia? We need to give these tax breaks in order for the industry to continue here. Could you elaborate a bit on the thinking here?
Yeah, absolutely. So with these productions in our province, we see a couple of major economic impacts that benefit British Columbians. First of all, the direct employment of tens of thousands of British Columbians. All of those workers pay taxes. They buy things in their local stores. They participate in their local economies. It has a net positive effect overall in terms of economic activity in the province. The second are the more indirect effects. We find that our film and television industry promotes British Columbia as a tourism jurisdiction, encourages people to want to visit the site of their favorite film or show, or they see a landscape that's particularly compelling, they look it up and they make a plan to visit. It drives our tourism industry. And the third is our government has a particular focus on needing to deliver services for British Columbians. Those services are under huge pressure. The cost of delivering healthcare with an aging population, a growing population, education, new schools and teachers. There are two ways that you can pay for that. One is through financing through debt or deficit. The other is by growing the economy, or the other is by raising taxes. Our goal here is to grow the economy so that more people are participating, more people are working, more people are contributing to offset the cost of those vital services. And what you'll see from us, what you saw from us at the beginning of the week with the announcement around $5 to $6 billion private sector investment in our electrical generation through wind power in the province, and a single window for permitting approval for those projects. The announcement today about additional support to grow our film and television sector, and more announcements to come around permitting reform related to our resource sector, support for our life sciences and tech sectors. What you're going to see is our government that is very focused on growing the economy so that we can pay for the services that British Columbians depend on and particularly need. This is part of our effort to make sure that that those resources are there. As the finance minister points out, we can't pour out from an empty cup. We need to make sure that that there's wealth generated, including through the film and television sector, to pay for the services that we count on.
Thanks, Paul. Next, we'll head to the phone line with Alec Lazenby from the Vancouver Sun.
Hi, Premier and Minister Bailey. I just wanted to ask, under provincial law, you were required to put forward a second quarterly update on November 30th. It is December 12th, and we're still waiting for that report. I was just wondering if there's any update on when we might get that report and what might be contained within it.
Hi, Alec. Thanks for the question, and you will receive a media alert about that next week, in fact. Thanks.
Follow-up, Alec?
In terms of a follow-up, I just wanted to ask about the hiring freeze that Premier David Eby talked about with the Chamber of Commerce, and Premier, can you go through a little bit about what that will look like, who will be included in that, who will not be, and just provide some more clarity around the details of that?
Yeah, this is particularly in relation to ensuring the sustainability of provincial finances. Our budget's under huge pressure. We're at the bottom of the economic cycle right now. Resource prices are low. The decision of people whether or not to buy a home has been constrained by high interest rates. People are feeling those high interest rates in other ways as well. In any debt they may have, they've got less money to spend. They're going into restaurants less often. When you put it all together, the same pressure that families are feeling in their budgets, we're seeing that in government budgets as well. So the direction to core government is we're having a freeze on hiring. But we will not have a freeze on hiring in relation to service delivery and healthcare and education, the services that people depend on. This is in relation to the administration of government. We're also doing a larger piece of work in relation to commitments we made during the election campaign around review of the administration of government and the costs associated with that in relation to health authorities and others. We're going to ensure that British Columbians are supported with the services that they need, but that we're delivering it in a way that's as fiscally efficient as possible as we show declining deficits over time and a path back to balance. British Columbians need support right now. Part of our strategy is growing the economy. Part of our strategy is ensuring that government is right-sized for the services that British Columbians count on.
Thanks, Alec. Next, we'll go to Rob Shaw from Czech News.
Well, hi, Premier. Ontario's Premier indicated yesterday that all of the provinces are putting together some type of list of what their retaliatory tariffs or moves could look like. Are you working on a list, and does it include things like getting rid of energy exports to the United States if they follow through with their tariffs?
So nothing is off the table for British Columbia as part of a unified Canadian effort to respond to these unjustified tariffs if President-elect Trump decides to move in that direction. The critical piece is it needs to be a unified Canadian response. We're providing feedback to the federal government in terms of our suggestions in relation to potential areas of attention. And the core message I think that we're trying to send is that this is all a massive impact on Canadians, on Americans, that is completely unjustified and unnecessary. This will hurt Canadians, this will hurt Americans, and we can address issues at the border, we can address other concerns of President-elect Trump without these tariffs. But if necessary, we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect BC businesses, Canadian businesses, and by extension, BC families who are dependent on the jobs that those businesses create. And we're going to make sure that happens. BC provides critical energy in the form of electricity and natural gas to the United States. We provide critical minerals out of the Teck smelter that China just recently restricted going to the United States. There are key inputs for the United States that come from British Columbia that we need Americans to understand are all implicated in this tariff threat. And that'll be part of our discussion with the federal government and our work at a national level to make sure that we respond strongly and that we're doing all we can to make sure Americans understand how closely tied we are in terms of these decisions.
Follow up, Mr. Shaw?
Sure, thanks. A Western Island First Nation today, the Mawichet and Muchalet Nation, filed an Aboriginal land title claim in court, wanting title and monetary compensation. And one of the questions was whether you were aware this was coming and if it's something you're willing to honor for title outside of the court process, or you want to see that court process in actual court.
Well, we respect the rights of nations to pursue their rights and title through court. Our preference is always resolution outside of the table. Minister Christine Boyle, I'm sure, will be engaging with those nations around conversation. If they decide to proceed with the court route, then we have no problem with them doing that if that's what they would like to do. Our preference, though, would not be to spend a bunch of money on lawyers fighting each other all the way through to the Supreme Court of Canada. We'd rather sit down and find a path forward, as we've done with many nations around the province and as we're going to continue to do.
Next, we'll go to Rob Buffum from CTV.
Premier, thanks for taking my question. I just wanted to circle back to this issue of tariffs and just confirm, Doug Ford had said that he would consider, if needed, cutting off the power to 1.5 million American homes. Not speaking specifically about tariffs, but you've said nothing is off the table from your perspective. Does that mean that you would also consider cutting off power in some form that is currently being supplied to the Americans? And I guess a second related point is, my understanding is we're not in a position to be a net exporter of electricity. So what power would you cut off if you were going to do so?
Okay, maybe I'll take the second part first. British Columbia provides peak power support all the way down the west coast of the United States to Washington State, Oregon, and California. We sold $1 billion worth of electricity to those states last year. That entirety of that electricity sale is implicated, one assumes, in the president-elect's threat to put tariffs. In other words, people in those western states will be paying, and companies, 25% more on top of the existing cost of electricity. And so it is not an insignificant amount of electricity. It is a massive amount of electricity. We are an importer, but we import at times when there's excess power in those states at a much lower cost. And so to understand the impact of the tariffs is to understand how tied we are in terms of these kinds of things across the border, back and forth, and the consequences that could flow. When I say nothing's off the table for British Columbia, nothing is off the table. I mean it. We will not stop until we are assured that the Americans fully understand how intertied we are, and the consequences visited on British Columbians will not be just felt by British Columbians. They'll also be felt by Americans. But we're going to do it as part of an integrated effort across the country, a coordinated effort, because it's going to hurt British Columbians, it's going to hurt Americans, it's going to hurt Ontarians, and we need to make sure the pain is spread, that the costs are spread, and that we're doing it in a coordinated way. This is not an issue that one province can take on alone, and we're going to do it in partnership with our business sector, with labor leaders, with British Columbians, and right across the country. So I look forward to working with President Ford. I look forward to working with Premier Ford and my other colleagues around the council table. We're there on Monday. We'll all be sitting together, strategizing the best path forward. There is a diversity of perspectives, but actually that is the strength of the table. We're able to talk to different audiences in the United States. That's a benefit for Canadians, and we're going to coordinate at that table, and I look forward to that conversation.
You have a follow-up, Rob?
Yeah, I do. By way of follow-up, you've emphasized the importance of having a unified Team Canada approach, and if I understand you, I think you've been pretty clear that nothing's off the table, so that would mean retaliatory tariffs as well from your perspective. But Governor Smith, I'm joking, Premier Smith in Alberta today said, I don't support tariffs on Canadian goods and I don't support tariffs on U.S. goods. What are your thoughts if our immediate neighbor is saying that, she doesn't support retaliatory tariffs? Is that going to create a problem if that's something that you feel like is important for the whole country to do?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're going to be sitting down at the table with Premier Smith and others, but I mean, at its core, I agree with Premier Smith. I think these tariffs are ridiculous. I think we should be working closely with the United States and addressing concerns that they may have. I think they're completely unjustified. I think it will, both Canadian retaliatory tariffs and American tariffs that bring those retaliations in, that both of them are a huge waste of time, energy, money, productivity, and wealth. And so the idea that we're headed down this path, to me, makes absolutely no sense. Sounds like it doesn't make much sense to Premier Smith either. The goal is to avoid those tariffs. But if we're forced into a corner, for British Columbians, nothing is off the table, and we will respond. And I will do it as part of a unified effort across the country.
Next, we'll go to Justine Hunter from the Globe and Mail.
Thanks for taking my call. I think I'm going to be the third or fourth reporter to take a stab at this, because I still don't understand if you support the notion of cutting off energy sales to the U.S. But maybe I can flip it around. What's the risk to British Columbia if that trade were suspended?
Well, there are significant impacts to British Columbians in any kind of tariff scenario. The Americans imposing tariffs on us, the federal government imposing tariffs on the United States. The electricity trade, as I explained, is worth $1 billion in income to BC Hydro. The natural gas trade across the border is probably on a similar order. We have manufacturing jobs. There's a number of firms, small and medium-sized businesses that export parts for machines or components of machines across the border. We export metals and minerals across the border, including critical minerals that are needed for key inputs for computers and other technology in the United States. It's hard to underemphasize how tied we are and what the consequences of both tariffs and retaliatory tariffs would be. I'm not sure what the disconnect is when I say that nothing is off the table. We are prepared to support retaliatory tariffs and a response to the United States that gets their attention to help them understand what the consequences would be for British Columbians and what the consequences would be for Americans of the president-elect proceeding in this direction. And we're going to do it as part of an integrated approach across the country. We'll talk about tariffs, we'll talk about energy, we'll talk about critical minerals, we'll talk about all the pieces that will get the attention of the Americans. And British Columbia will be part of that discussion. And if necessary, we will support retaliatory tariffs. I hope they're not necessary.
Follow-up, Justine?
Yes, and thank you. Just on another tack, will you be following Alberta's lead and investing provincial resources in patrolling the border?
I have explained on a number of occasions my frustration with the amount of federal resource that flows to other provinces in the form of various subsidies, economic programs, incentives, equalization payment in the amount of tens of billions of dollars that do not flow in kind to British Columbia. Our taxpayers net pay on equalization. We don't receive equalization. We don't see the same investment as New Brunswick just saw in our critical infrastructure around energy, $2 billion for 750,000 people in New Brunswick. I don't begrudge them it. I just want access to the same pool that other provinces seem to be able to draw from with the federal government. To take over federal responsibilities at the federal border and pay for that when British Columbians are paying for so many other things that other provinces don't have to pay for feels a bit like a step too far. But I have said at the table to the Prime Minister and to my colleagues, British Columbia will do our part to support the national effort at the border. But we expect the federal government to pay for federal government responsibilities. Our team will be part of the federal, provincial, territorial table on border security. We will integrate our provincial resources with that effort. It will result in additional spending, I am sure, from the provincial side that we can ill afford because we don't get the same support that other provinces get. But we will do our part because we're Canadians and that's what Canadians do. But we will not take over federal responsibilities at the border. That's their job. They got to pay for it. They got to do it. And we'll integrate and support to make sure that it happens.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question, and we will head to Richard Zussman from Global News.
Premier, the tree fruit industry was hit hard, and you made a number of commitments to them pre-election. Since swearing in your cabinet, has anybody from your government met directly with them yet? And what's the status of the one-time payment fund that you committed to?
Thanks, Richard. The update I can provide, I have to provide more detail to you, is that we were able to support those tree fruit growers with financial support in advance of the disbursements from the bankruptcy court. A number of these tree fruit growers were owed money by the co-op. The co-op had the assets to pay the money, but it was tied up in court, and they were looking at waiting for an extended period to get their money out of the court process. We were able to step in and provide those payments to the growers earlier and then recover that money back for the province from the court process. So it's one of the ways have been supporting those growers. To the best of our knowledge, all of those growers found packers for their apples, despite the collapse of the co-op because of changes we made around the agricultural land reserve rules, requiring 50% of product come from the local farm, which meant that farmers that had packing facilities could take apples from other farms and get that to market. The agriculture minister, I'll have to check with her about what meetings she's had already with the sector. I know the sustainability of the fruit sector in the Okanagan is front of mind for her, front of mind for our parliamentary secretary, Harwinder Sandhu, who comes from the region, and will continue to be a focus of our government because it's not just the apple sector, it's also the grape sector that took a huge hit as a result of the wild weather swings that we saw the last little while as we rebuild that sector.
Do you have a follow-up, Richard?
Yeah, as you know, this time of year is challenging for the industry with the frost setting in. Is there any more financial support coming to support the tremendous loss that fruit growers have felt, especially considering this year that there were so many that weren't able to provide that fruit to market, especially around stone fruit, as you know, due to that heat freeze.
Yeah, we're going to continue to find ways to support our farmers in the province. We have a number of insurance programs that are available for farmers. In addition, I know that support for these fruit farmers in the Okanagan continues to be a priority, whether it's grapes or apples or others, in terms of the Minister of Agriculture's mandate and what she has to work on. There are transformative changes that are needed in the sector. They need to be ensuring that their crops are responsive to the impacts of climate change, and government will be there to support them in replant programs to make sure that they're able to withstand future frosts or sudden swings in temperature like we saw that killed off so much of the crop this time.
And that concludes today's event. Thanks everyone for joining us here in Martini Town.
Right on.